Chapter 23. Fused Saber Technique. Your saber technique aptitude is strong. Perhaps you may comprehend the legendary saber intent in the future. Saber intent. May I ask, Senior Sister Lin, what does saber intent mean? Lin Fei asked curiously. Lin Yero was not a talkative person, but Lin Fei's talent in saber technique was truly amazing, and he was not an ordinary person. Therefore, she did not mind befriending him. So Lin Yero replied, "It is already very difficult to reach transcendence in ordinary martial arts. As for perfection, unless you have extraordinary talent and comprehension, it is impossible to achieve it. And above perfection, there is actually another realm called the realm of the divine. If you can reach the realm of the divine through saber technique perfection, then perhaps you can comprehend the saber intent. This saber intent is the realm of the divine." Lin Fei listened carefully. "May I ask how to practice saber intent, Senior Sister Lin?" Lin Yeo shook her head. "If I knew, I would have already practiced it. I only know that once you have grasped saber intent, others will have no chance of drawing their saber in front of you." That powerful? Lin Fei was shocked. This saber intent was simply amazing, a completely different realm. Saber intent is even more difficult than achieving innate. So, you don't have to worry too much about it. Although I don't know how to achieve saber intent, I have heard that those who have achieved saber intent are masters of various saber techniques. So, if you want to achieve saber intent, you can practice other saber techniques more, and perhaps you can find a way. After speaking, Lin Yero turned around and left the courtyard. "Thank you, Sister Lin." Lin Fei thanked her and looked up again. Lin Yero had disappeared without a trace. Saber intent is even more difficult than innate. Lin Fei shook his head and looked at the system panel. Host, Lin Fei. Martial Arts Realm, Body Refining 5th Level. Giant Whale Body Refining Technique, 5th Level, 71% progress. Dragon Elephant Vajrafist, Transcendence, 1% progress. 9 Shadow Saber Technique, Perfection, 0% progress. Vajra Iron Cloth, 5th Level, 1% progress. Tendon Transformation and Bone Forging Technique, 4th Level, 51% progress. His 9 Shadow Saber Technique had already reached perfection. But the progress of the cultivation behind perfection was directly 0. It was estimated that it would be difficult to make any progress in the future. The 9 Shadow Saber Technique had reached the level of 1 Saber, 9 Shadows, and had already reached its limit. The method that Lin Yero mentioned might be worth a try. Lin Fei made a calculation in his mind. Wasn't it just practicing more saber techniques? This was nothing for Lin Fei. His martial arts could practice themselves. Let's try a few more saber techniques first and see if it works. So Lin Fei went straight to the martial arts pavilion. The elder of the martial arts pavilion was still the same old man with white hair. This time, the old man didn't say much. Lin Fei went straight to the first floor and chose some basic saber techniques. Each of these saber techniques only required 100 contribution points, and 10 of them added up to only 1,000 contribution points. Lin Fei exchanged for all of them, took some time to memorize them, and then returned to his yard. Now, he just needed to wait quietly. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. In the blink of an eye, 6 days had passed. Your giant whale body refining technique, the cultivation progress has increased to 101% after a day of hard cultivation. Your giant whale body refining technique has broken through to the 6th level. After 6 days, a voice rang in Lin Fei's mind. Immediately, Lin Fei's blood and qi roared inside his body like a great river, surging continuously. A powerful momentum emanated from Lin Fei's body. Body refining 6th level. Lin Fei finally broke through, and the 7th level was just a step away. Moreover, given Lin Fei's age, once he reached the body refining 7th level, he would have a 100% chance of becoming an inner disciple of the 9 Profound Sect. Although there was only one word difference between inner and outer disciples, the treatment was vastly different. Lin Fei's body-refining martial arts had been steadily improving, but no one had yet taken the task of instructing him in the Dragon Elephant Vajra Fist. Lin Fei even suspected that no one in the Nine Profound sect had perfected the Dragon Elephant Vajra Fist. Lin Fei checked the 10 basic saber techniques again. These saber techniques were very simple. In just a few days, he had already reached the transcended level. Of course, this was because these saber techniques were all fast and had some similarities to the 9 shadow saber technique. Lin Fei continued to wait. In the blink of an eye, another 10 days had passed. After many days of hard work, your 36 fast saber technique has reached perfection. After a fierce battle with your 9 shadow saber technique, your 36 fast saber technique was defeated and willingly merged into the 9 shadow saber technique, increasing its foundation. Your 9 shadow saber technique has increased by 1% in practice progress. These were the series of voices that suddenly rang in Lin Fei's mind. Chapter 24. Body Refining 7th Level. 9 shadow saber techniques progress has reached 1%. Lin Fei was shocked. Since reaching perfection in the 9 shadow saber technique, the practice progress had been stuck at 0 with almost no improvement. But now it has actually reached 1%. And it seemed to be because the 36 fast saber had reached perfection and was absorbed by the 9 shadow saber technique, adding to its foundation. So that was why it increased by 1%. That means the 9 shadow saber technique can still improve even after reaching perfection. Just by practicing other saber techniques to perfection, they can be absorbed by the 9 shadow saber technique. Doesn't that mean I have a chance to learn saber intent? Lin Fei felt his heart burn with passion. Saber intent. Drawing a saber before it was a luxury. How powerful it would be. Even comprehending saber intent was harder than becoming innate. It showed how extraordinary the saber intent was. For ordinary people, it was very difficult to practice their martial arts to perfection, even for basic martial arts. Lin Fei had practiced 10 saber techniques. Fortunately, they were just basic saber techniques and did not require much insight to reach perfection. However, even if he merged all 10 basic saber techniques into the 9 shadow saber technique, the progress would only be increased to 10%. Lin Fei continued to wait patiently. As time passed, he achieved perfection in all the other 9 basic saber techniques, and each one was absorbed by the 9 shadow saber technique without exception. However, the progress of the 9 shadow saber technique had only increased to 8%. This indicated that some of the basic saber techniques might not be able to improve the progress of the 9 shadow saber technique at all. Therefore, Lin Fei's idea of searching for countless basic saber techniques and piling up the progress of the 9 shadow saber technique to 100% in order to comprehend saber intent was almost impossible to achieve. Perhaps, as the progress of the 9 shadow saber technique continued to increase, no matter how many basic saber techniques he practiced, they might not be able to improve the progress of the 9 shadow saber technique any further. So, Lin Fei went to the martial arts pavilion again and selected some saber techniques that were stronger than the basic ones, such as the swift wind saber technique, shadow saber technique, and so on. However, these saber techniques took a longer time to practice, and achieving perfection was not easy either. Lin Fei's idea of comprehending saber intent in a short period of time was shattered. Days passed one by one. Lin Fei's attention once again focused on the giant whale body refining technique, because the progress of the technique was approaching 100% again. This meant that the giant whale body refining technique was about to break through, and this breakthrough was different from previous ones and held significant meaning. Once the breakthrough happened, he would be at the 7th level of body refining and could become an inner disciple of the 9 Profound sect. Lin Fei was filled with excitement as he waited for this day to come. He did not have to wait long before he received the news. Your giant whale body refining technique has reached 101% after yesterday's intense practice. Your giant whale body refining technique has broken through to the 7th level. Many memories flooded Lin Fei's mind, and his blood and chi once again grew stronger. His body underwent an earth-shattering transformation. System, Lin Fei muttered to himself as he prepared to check his condition. Host, Lin Fei. Martial art realm, body refining 7th level. Giant whale body refining technique, 7th level, 1% progress. Dragon elephant Vajra fist, transcendence, 1% progress. 9 shadow saber technique, perfection, 8% progress. Vajra iron cloth, 6th level, 31% progress. Tendon transformation and bone forging technique, 5th level, 81% progress. He noticed that while many of his martial arts had progressed, his dragon elephant Vajra fist remained at transcendence and had not shown any progress. His task to guide the technique seemed to have been ignored, and it appeared that no one in the 9 profound sect was capable of perfecting the dragon elephant Vajra fist. Nevertheless, Lin Fei was happy as he finally achieved the 7th level of body refining at the age of 18, which meant he was now qualified to become an inner disciple of the 9 profound sect. Having reached the 7th level of body refining at the age of 18, he was already considered a genuine genius within 9 profound sect. Of course, there was still a considerable distance to be covered before reaching the level of the top talents. There were some who had reached the 7th level of body refining at the age of 12, setting a record within 9 profound sect. The inner sect disciples of 9 profound sect were the true backbone of the sect, and as such, many resources were allocated to them. Any 9 profound sect inner sect disciple was considered a big shot in their local area. For example, if Lin Fei were to return to the Ju Mountain Mansion City as an inner sect disciple, everything would be different. Some officials in the city would even treat him with a special kind of respect. Okay. Go to the transmission hall first to confirm my martial arts level, and then join the inner sect. Lin Fei couldn't wait any longer. He had spent enough time in the outer sect, and it was time for a change of scenery. With that, Lin Fei got up and headed straight for the transmission hall. Chapter 25. Promotion to the inner sect. The transmission hall was empty with only a few people present when Lin Fei arrived. They were undergoing martial arts certification. Lin Fei waited for his turn and then stepped forward. Respectful greetings to all the elders, Lin Fei bowed. Why have you come to the transmission hall? The elder asked. I came to certify my body refining at the 7th level, Lin Fei replied. Show me your badge, the elder demanded. Lin Fei took out his badge, and the elder got his information immediately. The elder was surprised after checking Lin Fei's information. Lin Fei, 18 years old. You were only at the 4th level of body refining before. Are you sure you're here to certify at the 7th level? Yes, I am here to certify at the 7th level. Please, elder, Lin Fei replied and immediately activated the giant whale body refining technique. A massive surge of blood energy hit them. Giant whale body refining technique was best known for its blood energy, so it was terrifying when fully activated. The elder had extensive experience and could tell Lin Fei's current state with a glance. The 7th level of the whale technique, not bad. You have indeed reached the 7th level of body refining. Moreover, you're only 18 years old and have reached the 7th level of body refining, making you an inner disciple. Those who reach the 7th level of body refining before 20 years of age and become inner disciples will be rewarded 10,000 contribution points by the sect. The elder smiled. Thank you, elder. Lin Fei was also very happy. The task of teaching the 9 shadow saber technique had cost him 5,000 contribution points before. Now, he had gained 10,000 contribution points in one go. Overall, he had profited. This is your new badge. Lin Fei received the new badge, which was red and represented the status of an inner disciple. Junior brother Liu, take Lin Fei to the inner sect to handle the procedures. Yes, senior brother, Liu replied. The elder waved his hand and Liu led Lin Fei out of the transmission hall. I'll take you to the inner sect first. As for your belongings in the outer sect, you can handle them after you join the inner sect. Yes, Elder Liu, Lin Fei nodded. He knew that the inner and outer sects were two different areas. Inner disciples could go to the outer door, but outer disciples cannot enter the inner door. Soon, Lin Fei followed Elder Liu to the inner door. Upon seeing the inner door, Lin Fei noticed that there were fewer people and many separate courtyards. Lin Fei, inner disciples have their own courtyards. Over there is an empty one, you can choose whichever one you like, said Elder Liu. Lin Fei scanned the courtyards and realized that they were all pretty similar. This one will do, he said. Okay, I'll make a note of it. Elder Liu quickly jotted it down. Now that you are officially an inner disciple, there are some things you need to know. Inner disciples can earn 1,000 contribution points every month. Most of the items that can be exchanged within the sect using contribution points can be purchased at a 50% discount by inner disciples. Inner disciples can also obtain 3 acquired level martial arts skills for free from the martial arts pavilion. However, these are all benefits that inner disciples enjoy. Naturally, there are corresponding obligations. Inner disciples must obey the sect's orders and go to various places to support or defend the sect. The support missions you see are pretty much the same thing. Lin Fei felt a shiver down his spine. Inner disciples enjoyed many benefits that were incomparable to outer disciples. Inner disciples were the true disciples of the 9 Profound sect, as most of them were acquired level martial artists who were considered real experts. The 9 Profound sect had seized so much territory that they needed disciples to defend it, and they might even come into conflict with other forces. This required experts, and acquired level martial artists were just for that. The 9 Profound sect relied on its numerous inner disciples to maintain its current power and even expand it further. This was also why 9 Profound sect was not stingy at all towards its inner disciples, the real reason why. The outer disciples might not have much experience in fighting and killing, but what about the inner disciples? Each of them had been through countless battles. They were no longer fragile flowers raised in a greenhouse. By the way, inner disciples can choose to have a master or not, Elder Li reminded. Usually, it is the innate level experts who take disciples as their students. Whether or not an innate level expert will accept you as a student depends on your fate. Thank you for reminding me, Elder Liu, Lin Fei said respectfully and bowed. Haha, I have high hopes for you. If you become an innate expert someday, who knows, I might even come to you for guidance, Elder Liu said, then left. Lin Fei walked into his yard. Although it was empty, it was clean, indicating that someone had been taking care of it. Not bad, but the outer yard needs to be sold, Lin Fei thought, and left the inner gate, returning to his outer yard. He had bought this outer yard with a considerable amount of money, and now that he was leaving, he naturally wanted to recoup his investment. So, Lin Fei spread the word that he was selling this yard. The news had only been out for a day when someone came to his door. And it was a woman. Chapter 26. Clan Patronage. Who are you? Lin Fei looked at the woman in front of him. She had a somewhat charming appearance. Her gaze was always sizing up Lin Fei. My name is Chen Lian. I heard that senior brother Lin was going to sell this courtyard, so I came to take a look. Buying the courtyard? 1,000 taels of silver, no bargaining, can be paid with contribution points. Lin Fei stated the price. He had bought the courtyard for 1,000 taels of silver in the first place. As long as he didn't lose money selling it, it was fine. Moreover, there were many outer disciples. There were also many wealthy disciples. Buying a comfortable courtyard for 1,200 silver was nothing. Deal. Chen Lian was very straightforward and directly gave Lin Fei a silver ticket worth 1,000 taels of silver. I won't take away some of the commonly used things in the house, leave them all to you. Lin Fei stood up and prepared to leave. Senior brother Lin, wait. Is there something else? Lin Fei looked at Chen Lian with a puzzled gaze. Chen Lian took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, I heard that senior brother Lin has just entered the inner door. Your information is quite well informed. Lin Fei nodded. It was not a secret, but the fact that the information was so well informed meant that Chen Lian must have some connections in the inner door. Senior brother Lin, I do have one more thing to ask you about. I represent the Chen family and invite senior brother Lin to accept our family's patronage. Once you become a patron, our Chen family will provide you with 1,000 taels of silver every month. If senior brother Lin becomes an acquired martial artist in the future, we will provide you with 5,000 taels of silver every month. Patronage. Lin Fei heard of this for the first time. Chen Lian smiled and said, it's normal that Senior Lin hasn't heard of it. In fact, almost every inner disciple becomes a patron of some family or force. After all, martial artists need various resources. Without money or contribution points, how much can be achieved with just completing tasks and the monthly allowance given by the 9 Profound Sect? So, some wealthy merchants or forces need to provide support. We provide money, and in return, inner disciples become patrons. We can also take advantage of the name of inner disciples to act. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. Lin Fei pondered for a moment and asked meaningfully, it's not that simple, is it? You can't just take money for nothing. Besides the name of the inner disciple, if something happens, I have to step in, right? Chen Lian nodded and said, naturally. Since we could have sponsored senior brother Lin, if the Chen family encounters any trouble, we will naturally ask you for help. But if the enemy is too formidable, senior brother Lin can also refuse to help. It's not mandatory, and we cannot force you. Even every time senior brother Lin helps, we will offer compensation to ensure that senior Lin is satisfied. Our Chen family is a family of good deeds, and we usually don't encounter significant trouble. For general troubles, we can handle it ourselves. Senior brother Lin can consider it carefully and compare the prices offered by other forces. Our sincerity is undoubtedly the most abundant. Chen Lian seemed very confident. Lin Fei returned to the inner door. Regarding Chen Lian's proposal of clan patronage, Lin Fei also considered it carefully. The conditions were indeed quite good. However, he wanted to wait a little longer to see if other forces were offering higher prices. Days passed one by one. In a blink of an eye, 6 days had passed. Lin Fei had almost understood the inner door. System. Lin Fei checked the system panel. Host, Lin Fei. Martial Arts Realm, Body Refining 7th level. Giant Whale Body Refining Technique, 7th level, 7% progress. Dragon Elephant Vajrafest Transcendence, 1% progress. 9 Shadow Saber Technique, Perfection, 8% progress. Vajra Iron Cloth, 6th level, 61% progress. Tendon Transformation and Bone Forging Technique, 6th level, 11% progress. During this period, the tendon transformation and bone forging technique had the most significant improvement, reaching the 6th level, making Lin Fei's bones and muscles stronger and increasing his strength. However, what made Lin Fei uneasy was the giant whale body refining technique. In 6 days, his progress in cultivation had only increased by 6%, reaching a total of 7% when combined with its previous progress. In other words, he was making average daily progress of only 1%. At this rate, it would take him at least 100 days to break through to the 8th level. That was almost 3.5 months. Actually, this cultivation speed was already considered fast. But compared to Lin Fei's previous cultivation speed, it was simply too slow. After all, Lin Fei's goal was not just to reach the acquired or innate levels, but to go beyond innate. He had lofty ambitions. If the body refining stage was progressing so slowly, what about the acquired or even innate levels? Wouldn't they be even slower? It seems that I have to find a way to speed up my cultivation of the giant whale body refining technique. The main focus of the giant whale body refining technique is to cultivate qi and blood. So, as long as I can quickly increase my blood and qi, then my cultivation will definitely improve. Within the 9 Profound sect, there is a type of blood-increasing pill that can enhance one's blood, but it's very expensive. One pill requires 1,000 contribution points. Lin Fei stood up. He decided to exchange for one blood-increasing pill to test its effectiveness. So, Lin Fei got up and went to the treasure pavilion of the 9 Profound sect. Chapter 27. Blood-increasing pill. The treasure pavilion was a crucial place in the 9 Profound sect. It was said that the guards at the entrance were all strong practitioners above the 7th level of the acquired realm. And within the treasure pavilion, there were innate realm experts guarding it at all times. The reason why it was so highly valued was that almost all of 9 Profound sect's cultivation resources were stored there. This included precious medicinal herbs, weapons, pills, and more, almost everything you could ask for. Of course, the prerequisite was that you must have contribution points. Elder, I want to exchange for a blood increase pill. Lin Fei spent 1,000 contribution points to exchange for a blood increase pill. Soon, Lin Fei returned to his room. He sat cross-legged and took out the blood increase pill. The pill was blood red in color and emitted a strange fragrance. Gulo. Lin Fei swallowed the blood increase pill in one gulp. Suddenly, his body began to feel hot, and the blood and qi in his body accelerated their flow. Even his giant whale body refining technique automatically started to operate. As time passed, about an hour later, Lin Fei heard a voice from the system in his mind. Your giant whale body refining technique has absorbed the power of the blood increase pill, and your blood and qi have gained significant growth. Your cultivation progress has increased by 5%. Whoosh! Lin Fei opened his eyes, a hint of brilliance in them. One blood increase pill can increase my giant whale body refining technique's cultivation progress by 5%. Then, with 20 blood increase pills, I can break through to the 8th layer of the giant whale body refining technique. 20 blood increase pills require a cost of 20,000 contribution points. Lin Fei carefully calculated it. It was worth it. Lin Fei's current contribution points were still around 40,000. After all, he needed to buy the medicinal materials for Vajra iron cloth every day. Otherwise, his hard body technique cannot be improved. And this was only the 7th level. If he reached the 8th level, the blood-increasing pill might not be as effective. At that time, the consumption will be even greater. All of these required contribution points, which were money. Lin Fei needed a lot of money. It seems like I should go find Chen Lian. Lin Fei decided in his heart. During this period, some families and forces did approach him proactively after Lin Fei entered the inner door. Their only purpose was to offer patronage. However, the conditions provided by these forces did not surpass those offered by Chen Lian. Even most of them were worse than Chen Lian's conditions. Lin Fei personally went to find Chen Lian. Chen Lian lived in the courtyard where Lin Fei used to stay in the outer door. Senior brother Lin, have you made a decision? Chen Lian didn't seem surprised to see Lin Fei come to find her. However, she was still very enthusiastic. Chen Lian, 15,000 taels of silver per year, and it must be paid in advance and in full. If the Chen family agrees, I can be their patron. Lin Fei went straight to the point and directly stated his conditions. 15,000 taels of silver, and it must be paid in advance and in full. This... Chen Lian was a little hesitant. Within 2 years, I will reach the acquired realm. Lin Fei said coldly. Is that true? Of course. If I don't reach acquired within 2 years, I will return everything I received from the Chen family. Lin Fei's tone was full of confidence. Chen Lian pondered for a while. Reaching acquire realm within 2 years. At that time, Lin Fei would only 20 years old. For a 20-year-old acquire realm martial artist, that was already considered an outstanding talent. After a long while, Chen Lian looked up and said, "Senior brother Lin, I personally lean towards agreeing with you. However, I cannot make the decision myself. I have to report back to the Chen family. I can't wait for too long." Lin Fei frowned. "Within 10 days, we will definitely give senior brother Lin a reply." "Okay, let's set it for 10 days. After speaking, Lin Fei turned and left the outer sect area. In Lin Fei's opinion, the Chen family would most likely agree. It was only extra 3,000 silver taels a year. But in exchange, they would have a potential acquire realm martial artist as their patron. This transaction was definitely not a loss. After leaving the outer sect area, Lin Fei went straight to the treasure pavilion. "Elder, I want to exchange for 20 blood-increasing pills," Lin Fei said directly. 20 blood-increasing pills. The elder of the treasure pavilion furrowed his brows and said, "Blood-increasing pills can indeed enhance one's blood and qi, but absorbing them requires a long time and a huge amount of energy. Moreover, if you take too many blood-increasing pills, it will cause your blood and qi to become unstable and affect the foundation for developing inner power in the future. Are you sure you want to exchange for 20 blood-increasing pills?" "Yes, please." "Elder," Lin Fei said without hesitation. Lin Fei had known about these drawbacks that the elder had mentioned a long time ago. But none of these was a problem for him. His giant whale body refining technique was very diligent. It practiced almost day and night, like a model worker. With such diligent cultivation, how could it cause his blood and qi to become unstable and affect his foundation? Instead, his foundation would be incredibly solid. These are 20 blood-increasing pills, and you can only take 1 pill per day. "Thank you, Elder." Lin Fei's contribution points were reduced by 20,000, but he obtained 20 blood-increasing pills. He did not go out of the courtyard again and instead took blood-increasing pills every day to cultivate. Most people could only take 1 blood-increasing pill per day at most. Taking more than that would waste the medicine's efficacy and make it difficult to absorb. But Lin Fei was different. He could easily absorb 2 blood-increasing pills every day. Taking 2 blood-increasing pills allowed Lin Fei's progress in the giant whale technique to increase by 10% every day, and the speed of its progress was very fast. Chapter 28. Body Refining 8th Level. In the blink of an eye, 9 days had passed. On this day, Lin Fei's blood and qi trembled. Immediately, he heard the voice of the system in his mind. "Your giant whale body refining technique has broken through to the 8th level after many days of hard training." Lin Fei opened his eyes wide. Body refining 8 levels. Lin Fei immediately checked the system panel. Host, Lin Fei. Martial Arts Realm, Body Refining 8th Level. Giant Whale Body Refining Technique, 8th Level, 2% Progress. Dragon Elephant Vajrafest Transcendence, 1% Progress. 9 Shadow Saber Technique, Perfection, 8% Progress. Vajra Iron Cloth, 7th Level, 6% Progress. Tendon Transformation and Bone Forging Technique, 6th Level, 56% Progress. Sure enough, Lin Fei had now reached the 8th level of body refining. And Vajra Iron Cloth had finally reached the 7th level. Lin Fei reached out his hand. His skin looked a bit rough, but it was as tough as cowhide. Even ordinary sabers might not be able to cut his skin. Vajra Iron Cloth had an unparalleled defense against some force attacks. Now, even if Lin Fei stood still and let those below the 7th level of body refining attack him, he wouldn't be hurt much. This was hard martial arts. Training hard martial arts was very slow. But if one reached a high level, it would be terrifying. However, at this point, the effect of some of the Vajra iron cloth's medicine baths had already diminished. Similarly, Lin Fei could clearly feel that the blood-increasing pills' effect had also weakened a lot. Although it had not completely lost its effect, if he wanted to rely on herbal baths and blood-increasing pills to improve his training progress again, he would inevitably consume more quantities. That meant silver. A huge amount of silver. Lin Fei now had just over 10,000 contribution points on him. For Lin Fei, it was not enough. It's been 9 days. How Chen Lian's side is doing? Lin Fei thought for a moment, got up directly, and left the inner door. Soon, Lin Fei arrived at Chen Lian's courtyard. Chen Lian, what is your Chen family's decision? Lin Fei saw Chen Lian in the courtyard and asked directly. Senior brother Lin, I was just about to find you. Yesterday, someone from the Chen family came. They also brought silver bells and said that a genius like senior brother Lin needs at least 20,000 taels of silver a year. Chen Lian immediately took out the silver bells. 20,000 taels. Lin Fei took the silver bells. He remembered very clearly that his request was only 15,000 taels of silver a year. But the Chen family's attitude was very strange. They gave an extra 5,000 taels of silver. Interesting. I feel your sincerity. Lin Fei nodded. His goodwill towards the Chen family immediately increased a lot. After all, he was really short of silver now. And the Chen family just right sent it over. As long as you are satisfied, senior brother Lin. Chen Lian smiled. Lin Fei returned to the inner door. He now had more than 30,000 contribution points. So he directly bought 30 blood-increasing pills. Lin Fei now only hoped to reach the 9th level of body refining as soon as possible. Because only when he reached the 9th level of body refining could he try to give birth to the inner power. Once inner power was born, he would become an acquired martial artist. There was a fundamental difference between an acquired martial artist and a body-refining martial artist. Now Lin Fei didn't have many contribution points left. His cultivation speed in the future would inevitably slow down. Lin Fei thought about it, but he didn't have a good solution. After advancing to the 8th level of body refining, Lin Fei used the blood-increasing pills again. He could absorb 3 pills every day. Therefore, in just 10 days, Lin Fei's blood-increasing pills were consumed. And Lin Fei's progress in the giant whale body refining technique was only 40%. In other words, 3 blood-increasing pills could only increase Lin Fei's progress in the giant whale body refining technique by 4% each day. However, even so, the blood-increasing pill was also gone. It was increasingly difficult for Lin Fei to maintain a 4% daily speed increase. However, there was also some good news. Tendon transformation and bone forging technique had reached the 7th level. The progress of the tendon transformation and bone forging technique had always been steady. It only needed to listen to Buddhist and Taoist scriptures. However, after reaching the 7th level, just listening to Buddhist and Taoist scriptures was no longer enough. Its progress had also slowed down. During this time, Lin Fei was hesitant because his body refining progress was very slow. He went to the martial arts pavilion and practiced some saber techniques. However, each of them barely reached transcendence. All of them had hit a bottleneck. By now, almost all of Lin Fei's martial arts skills had hit a bottleneck and could no longer be improved. I need to come up with a plan, and the most important thing is to earn contribution points. 1,000 contribution points per month were clearly not enough to support Lin Fei's cultivation. Let's go to the task hall and see. Lin Fei was also helpless and could only go to the task hall to see if there were any suitable missions for him. He now understood why most of the disciples who accepted missions were inner disciples, while outer disciples were rare. Inner disciples consumed resources at a terrifying rate, and without doing missions, they couldn't sustain the cost of practicing martial arts. Lin Fei went to the task hall. It always seemed crowded here. The task wall was covered with various missions. Lin Fei. Suddenly, a clear and cold female voice came from behind Lin Fei. Chapter 29. Flowing Clothes Skill. Lin Fei turned his head and saw a familiar figure. Senior Sister Ling, are you here to pick up a mission too? Lin Fei looked at Lin Yero. Lin Yero was an inner disciple, now Lin Fei was also an inner disciple, so their identities were equal. Lin Yero narrowed her eyes slightly. It seemed that she saw Lin Fei's badge. So, you have become an inner disciple. It seems that you have reached the 7th level of body refining. I just recently advanced to the 7th level of body refining, Lin Fei replied politely. Lin Yero looked Lin Fei up and down before speaking directly. You came to the task hall to pick up a mission, right? Being an inner disciple consumes too many resources compared to being an outer disciple. I have a mission here. Well, it's my personal request. I don't know if you will take it or not. What mission? Lin Fei asked. I have a distant cousin in the Mountain Mansion City who has had some trouble at home recently. There's been a flower-snatching thief in the Mountain Mansion City recently, suspected to be above the 7th level of body refining. My cousin's family sent me a letter asking me to go to the Mountain Mansion City to protect my cousin for a period of time. But I have had a crucial task recently and can't spare the time, so I entrust you to go to the Mountain Mansion City. The deadline is 1 month. I will give you 10,000 contribution points separately. After the deadline, my cousin's family will give you another 20,000 silver. If you can catch or kill that flower-stealing thief, not only can you get my cousin's family's silver, but also the official reward from the government. Lin Fei's eyes lit up. However, after considering for a moment, he asked in doubt, this condition is too good. Even an acquired strong person could be hired with this. Why would you entrust such a mission to a mere body-refining martial artist like me? Lin Yero laughed. You are not an ordinary body-refining martial artist. With the 9 Shadow Saber technique at the perfection realm, it is rare for anyone in the body-refining stage to withstand your 1 saber. Moreover, although 3,000 silver can hire acquired martial artists, they will not be too grateful to you. For you, it is like giving you charcoal in the snow, and the significance is different. Well, will you take this mission or not? Lin Fei looked at Lin Yero meaningfully. Lin Yero was straightforward, even saying giving you charcoal in the snow. It was clear that she was trying to win over Lin Fei. Anyway, entrusting the mission to anyone was the same. Lin Fei had enough strength. Okay, I'll take on this task. Thank you, Senior Sister Ling, for your kindness. Lin Fei saluted with clasped hands. Lin Yero took the initiative to show kindness, so of course he had to accept. Okay, I'll transfer 10,000 contribution points to you first. I'll also write a letter for you to take directly to the Liu family in the Mountain Mansion City. So, Lin Yero transferred the contribution points to Lin Fei and gave him a letter. The flower thief must have outstanding speed and agility. Guarding for a month would be too time-consuming. The best way is to catch or kill him. However, to catch the flower thief, I must have martial arts skills in speed and agility. So, Lin Fei went to the martial arts pavilion again. He had just received 10,000 contribution points from Lin Yero. Plus, he had several thousand contribution points from before. Therefore, choosing a lightness skill was naturally not a problem. There were also many lightness skills in the martial arts pavilion. After all, speed and agility were also important in combat. Like Lin Yero, she had good lightness skills that even if Lin Fei had the 9 Shadow Saber technique at perfection level, he wouldn't be able to touch her at all. However, what Lin Fei wanted was a lightness skill that combined speed and agility. This was a bit difficult to find. After all, body-refining martial artists did not have inner power. Their agility relied solely on physical movements. As for speed, that had to rely on brute force. After searching for a long time, Lin Fei finally found a martial arts skill that was barely satisfactory. Flowing clothes skill. Agility and light, allowing one to move quickly and nimbly within a small space. Lin Fei glanced at the introduction of this martial arts skill. He was still relatively satisfied. As for speed, Lin Fei had already given up. Without inner power, what talk of speed? It would be better to compete in endurance. Anyway, for body-refining cultivators, whoever ran faster relied on endurance and strength. Lin Fei exchanged for this lightness skill. It took him half an hour to memorize the flowing clothes skill. Your flowing clothes skill has been beginner level after half an hour of hard training. Lin Fei was moved. Swish, swish, swish. In the training room, Lin Fei began to move and dodge. The training room was very narrow. But Lin Fei moved like a light swallow, agile and nimble. The agility is indeed not bad. Hope it can be as diligent as the dragon elephant Vajrafist. Lin Fei was very satisfied with this martial art. But he still didn't know the nature of this martial art. Lin Fei preferred diligent martial arts that he didn't need to worry about them. Lin Fei had already gained lightness skills, so he didn't want to delay any longer. He packed his luggage and carried the big saber on his back. This was Lin Fei's second time leaving the mountain. But this time, he didn't need to take on a task. Inner disciples could leave the 9 profound sect freely. Lin Fei rented a fast horse. Riding on the fast horse, he left a trail of dust and quickly left 9 profound sect. Chapter 30. Martial world people in Lin family. Liu family, Yi Mountain Mansion City. In the Liu family hall, gathered many people from the martial world were dressed in strange clothes. Mr. Liu was a slick and cunning businessman, looking very friendly. He said to the martial artists, "Thank you, heroes, for coming to help me in the Liu family. However, we cannot underestimate the wind-chasing fragrance. We have to wait a little longer." At this point, a burly man carrying a large hammer became unhappy and shouted, "Mr. Liu, we have so many martial arts experts here. Even if the wind-chasing fragrance is an acquired martial artist, he dare not come to the Liu family and cause trouble. Why are we still waiting? Yes, who are we waiting for? We'll be in trouble if we don't make a plan now and the wind-chasing fragrance arrives." For a while, these martial artists were all a little dissatisfied. Mr. Liu continued to smile and said, "Dear heroes, we still have to wait for my niece. My niece is not an ordinary person, she is an inner disciple of the 9 profound sect. She has already reached the acquired 4th level. I have written to her and invited her to come to the Liu family to help us. She should be arriving in the next few days." Mr. Liu's words quieted the many martial artists in the hall. An inner disciple of the 9 profound sect. And even reached acquired 4th level. Such a strong person was not someone these mere and wandering martial artists could compare to. Mr. Liu, someone outside, claims to be a disciple of the 9 profound sect and says was invited to the Liu family. At this time, a servant hurried over to report. Mr. Liu's face lit up and he said with a smile, "It should be my niece, please bring her in quickly." The martial artists in the hall also brightened up. The inner disciple of the 9 profound sect. They also wanted to see what she was capable of. After a while, a strong-looking man was led by the Liu family servant to the hall. Lin Fei from the 9 profound sect, greet Mr. Liu. The man was Lin Fei, who had traveled all the way to the Yi Mountain Mansion City as quickly as possible. "Hero Lin, where is my niece?" "Niece?" Lin Fei quickly realized that the other party was referring to Ling Yara. Therefore, Lin Fei said directly, "Senior sister Ling has some important matters to attend to, so she couldn't come. Therefore, she entrusted me to come and protect the safety of the Liu family." This is Senior Sister Ling's letter. Lin Fei handed the letter to Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu quickly opened and read the letter. His brows furrowed slightly and he glanced at Lin Fei. Then, Mr. Liu put away the letter and smiled. According to what Lin Yero said in the letter, Hero Lin, you are also an inner disciple of the Nine Profound Sect. Yes, I was promoted to the inner sect not long ago. Lin Fei answered truthfully. That's good. An inner disciple of the Nine Profound Sect should be a talent like my niece. Mr. Liu was quite satisfied. I heard that according to the rules of the Nine Profound Sect, as long as you reach the 7th level of body refining before the age of 20, you can be promoted to the inner sect. You were just promoted to the inner sect not long ago. You are still in body refining. Lin Fei raised his head. The person who spoke was a cold-eyed bald man. Hero Lin, aren't you an acquired martial artist? Mr. Liu was also a bit anxious. I haven't advanced to acquire realm yet. Lin Fei said calmly. Suddenly, Mr. Liu's face became a bit unpleasant. In the hall, many martial arts people whispered and laughed, looking at Lin Fei, a bit meaningful. Mr. Liu, since everyone is here, let's discuss how to catch the flower thief, the wind chasing fragrance. Right, I heard that the government officers have a bounty of 3,000 taels of silver. This is not a small amount. I think that the wind-chasing fragrance is probably afraid to come to the Liu mansion now. For a time, all the martial arts people in the hall began to discuss loudly. It seemed that they had completely ignored Lin Fei's presence. Hero Lin, I'm sorry for this. You came from afar and must be tired. Let me arrange for you to rest first. It was evident that Mr. Liu was somewhat disappointed with Lin Fei. But after all, he was entrusted by Lin Yero, so Mr. Liu could not lose his manners. Thank you. Lin Fei was indeed a bit tired. Then, led by Liu's servants, he was arranged to rest in a guest room. In the room, Lin Fei thought in his mind. System. Immediately, the system panel appeared in front of Lin Fei. Host, Lin Fei. Martial Arts Realm, Body Refining 8th Level. Giant Whale Body Refining Technique, 8th Level, 42% progress. Dragon Elephant Vajra Fist Transcendence, 1% progress. 9 Shadow Saber Technique, Perfection, 8% progress. Vajra Iron Cloth, 7th Level, 6% progress. Tendon Transformation and Bone Forging Technique, 7th Level, 11% progress. Flowing Clothes Skill, Mastery, 42% progress. Lin Fei looked at the mastery level achieved in the Flowing Clothes skill and felt quite satisfied. In the past few days of rushing on the road, Lin Fei had encountered some bandits and used the Flowing Clothes skill a few times. Flowing Clothes skill did not disappoint him and it reached the mastery level in just a few days. With the Flowing Clothes skill, as long as the flower thief the wind-chasing fragrance appeared, Lin Fei would have the confidence to catch or kill the opponent. As for those mocking and ridiculing him, Lin Fei did not care. Those wandering martial artists who could achieve the acquired realm would already be lucky enough. How could Lin Fei bother about them? Lin Fei closed his eyes to rest and didn't know how long had passed when he heard a knock on the door. Click. Lin Fei opened the door and saw a beautiful and graceful young woman standing outside, accompanied by 2 maidservants. Chapter 31. The wind-chasing fragrance. May I know who you are? Lin Fei didn't recognize this woman. At this moment, one of the woman's maidservants said, "Young Master Lin, this is our miss." So it's Miss Liu. Lin Fei immediately understood. This young woman must be Lin Yero's distant cousin and the person he needed to protect. Miss Liu looked graceful and said, "Thank you for coming all the way, young Master Lin. Please forgive my father's neglect earlier." "It's nothing. The Li family didn't mistreat me." Pausing for a moment, Lin Fei asked, "Miss Liu, what brings you to see me?" Lin Fei knew that Miss Liu was a young lady from a wealthy family and not someone who would casually meet strangers. Since she came to find him, there must be a reason. Miss Li smiled slightly and said, I heard that young Master Lin had arrived, so I came to see you. My father may not know my cousin's character, but how could I? My cousin is always cold on the outside but warm at heart and very perceptive. If she promised to come to the Li family but couldn't make it due to other matters, then the person she sent to replace her must be no ordinary person. Even if young Master Lin is not an acquired martial artist, I believe you have other means that are not inferior to those of one. I'm afraid my father's neglect may have caused some displeasure in your heart. So I came to apologize. Lin Fei found it amusing. This Miss Liu was much smarter than Mr. Liu. Miss Liu, don't worry. Since I've promised to protect you, I will do my best to keep you safe. Lin Fei also made a promise. Only then did Miss Liu feel relieved, so she bowed and left. This Lin Fei seems to be just an acquired martial artist at most. Do Miss really value him so much? You even went to see him specifically. Miss Li's maid seemed to have doubts. What do you know? My cousin is proud, and even if someone is also an acquired martial artist, she won't look at them if they are not exceptionally talented. But Lin Fei, a mere body refining martial artist, can make my cousin specially commission him to protect me. It shows that Lin Fei definitely has extraordinary abilities. I'm afraid it depends on Lin Fei in the end whether I can get through this ordeal safely. After speaking, Liu's expression also revealed a hint of worry. The flower thief that when chasing fragrance had never failed in Immortality Mansion City recently. Even if she was clever, she was ultimately a weak woman with no ability to defend herself. She still had some worries in her heart. 3 days passed in a flash. The Li mansion was very quiet and nothing happened. Not only did the wind-chasing fragrance not come, but there was also even no trace of the wind-chasing fragrance in Immortality Mansion City. However, the people in the Li mansion did not relax their vigilance. As long as the wind-chasing fragrance was not eliminated, they would not be at ease. After all, who didn't know the most beautiful person in Immortality Mansion City was the daughter of the Li mansion? Lin Fei was in the hall. He, like other guests, was guarding near the hall. At this moment, a man with a long sword walked in from outside. He was Shen Qianshen, known for his reputation in the martial arts community. Wait. A short monk suddenly stood in front of Shen Qianshen. What's the matter? Shen Qianshen's face turned cold and his tone was somewhat unfriendly. After all, anyone would be unhappy when blocked. The short monk was ugly and his mouth curved into a slight smile that looked somewhat sinister. You're not Shen Qianshen, the monk said coldly. At this point, everyone's gaze turned to him. Lin Fei also frowned. He had met Shen Qianshen several times. If this wasn't Shen Qianshen, then who was? Seeing that everyone was staring at him, the monk sneered and said, I have a very sensitive nose. I remember the scent of everyone's body very clearly. There isn't as much fragrance on Shen Qianshen as there is on you. And some of the fragrances are aphrodisiacs. Being able to carry aphrodisiacs with you and being in the Li mansion, when chasing fragrance, I didn't expect you to infiltrate the Li mansion in this way. Upon hearing the monk's words, everyone's expression changed drastically, and they all raised their weapons to surround Shen Qianshen. Shen Qianshen looked around, but was not panicked. Instead, a strange smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Didn't expect my disguise to be discovered by your dog nose. Now that you've seen through my disguise, you can be the first to die. In an instant, Shen Qianshen drew his sword and attacked. Swish! The sword light flashed and a hole appeared in the monk's throat. You! The monk stared at Shen Qianshen in disbelief and died, seemingly unable to believe that he had died so easily. Thump! The monk's body fell to the ground. At this point, Shen Qianshen had already taken off his face mask, revealing a slightly old face. It really is the wind-chasing fragrance, Pity the monk was killed by him. Didn't expect the wind-chasing fragrance's disguise to be so lifelike. The martial artists present did not ask where the real Shen Qianxing had gone. Since the wind-chasing fragrance could disguise himself as Shen Qianxing, there was no need to ask. Shen Qianxing was probably dead. Chapter 32. Beheading an acquired martial artist. Don't waste your breath with him, kill. One of the swordsmen wielding a saber shouted and charged directly toward the wind-chasing fragrance. Sure. But the next moment, the wind-chasing fragrance struck back with a sword. The crowd didn't even see the sword swinging, yet the man was already dead. What? The wind-chasing fragrance is known for his swift body movements, but how can his martial arts be so strong? The monk only at the body refining 6th level. However, the man he just killed was Zhao Zhu the Mad Saber, a body refining 8th level expert. How could he not block a single move? Could it be that the wind-chasing fragrance is an acquired martial artist? Otherwise, Zhao Zhu couldn't have been defeated so easily. For a moment, everyone stared at the wind-chasing fragrance in awe and fear. They only knew him for the wind-chasing fragrance's agility and subconsciously thought that his martial arts were only average. But now, after witnessing his skills, they realized how wrong they were. Terribly wrong. Ha ha ha. Dare to block my path, you bunch of worthless fools. Die. The wind-chasing fragrance dashed into the crowd of swordsmen, brandishing his sword. Swish, swish, swish. His sword was flashing with each move and was stained with blood. With every swing of his sword, one swordsman after another fell dead. In just a few breaths, more than 10 martial world masters had been killed. At this moment, the crowd was filled with horror. Inner power. The wind-chasing fragrance has inner power. He is an acquired martial artist, cried out one of the swordsmen who had survived his attack. Inner power was the symbol of an acquired martial artist. It had been confirmed that the wind-chasing fragrance was an acquired martial artist. At this moment, all the martial world heroes were shocked. They dared not approach and surround the wind-chasing fragrance anymore. HMPH, a bunch of weaklings. The wind-chasing fragrance stood with his sword, which was still dripping with blood. He gave a cold glance and then prepared to move to the back hall. Swish. Just then, a figure moved. Lin Fei, who had been silent all this time, finally made a move. In fact, Lin Fei had been observing all along. He found out that the wind-chasing fragrance was indeed an acquired martial artist. He had inner power. But he didn't always use his inner power. Instead, he tried his best to avoid using it. Most of the time, he used his swordsmanship to kill those martial artists. Lin Fei immediately understood. The wind-chasing fragrance should only be at the 1st or 2nd level of acquired. His inner power was very limited. He couldn't just squander it at will. And after killing so many martial artists, the wind-chasing fragrance had already consumed a lot of his inner power. At this moment, he was at his weakest. And that was when Lin Fei made his move. 9 Shadow Saber Technique. Lin Fei didn't hesitate. He went all out from the start. Facing an acquired martial artist with inner power, Lin Fei wouldn't dare to take it lightly. Swish. Lin Fei swung his saber. 9 saber shadows appeared. The sharp saber edges seemed to envelop the wind-chasing fragrance from all directions. There was no escape for the wind-chasing fragrance. This saber technique. The wind-chasing fragrance's expression changed slightly. But in the next moment, he actually thrust his longsword forward. Clang! The tip of his sword accurately pierced the tip of Lin Fei's saber. Good swordsmanship. Lin Fei's saber was blocked, so he didn't hesitate to lunge forward and throw a fierce punch with his left hand. Dragon Elephant Vajra Fist. Lin Fei not only had saber techniques but also fist techniques. Moreover, his dragon elephant Vajra fist had even reached the level of transcendence, and his punch was extremely powerful combined with the chi from tendon transformation and bone forging technique and gate whale body refining technique. Once it hit the opponent, even an acquired martial artist would be killed without a doubt. How dare you! The wind-chasing fragrance also threw a punch. Bang! The fists of the two collided fiercely. Lin Fei immediately felt a tingling pain in his hand, making his arm feel weak and powerless. Inner power. Obviously, the wind-chasing fragrance had used his inner power. This inner power was extremely destructive to those without inner power. However, Lin Fei's dragon elephant Vajra fist was not easy to take either. Crack! The wind-chasing fragrance's face changed drastically, even letting out a scream. This punch was powerful. It directly broke his arm. The wind-chasing fragrance's punches and kicks were obviously weak. Caught off guard, he was caught by Lin Fei. Seized the opportunity. Lin Fei gritted his teeth and endured the pain and weakness in his left hand. He held the saber in his right hand and swung it again. Split. This saber strike was impossible for the wind-chasing fragrance to avoid. Lin Fei cut off his head with one swing. For a moment, blood splattered. The whole hall was filled with a strong smell of blood. Thump. The headless body of the wind-chasing fragrance fell to the ground. The whole hall was in chaos. The previous noisy and unruly martial artists all looked at each other in disbelief. It seemed that they could not believe what they saw. The wind-chasing fragrance was an acquired martial artist. He had already killed more than 10 people. But Lin Fei, who they had ridiculed before, actually clashed head-on with the wind-chasing fragrance with his body-refining martial artist body and killed him. This was truly shocking for them. Is this the strength of a disciple from a major sect? Some martial artists whispered to each other, unable to conceal the shock on their faces. Chapter 33. The Secret of Inner Power. Lin Fei, a body-refining martial artist, slew the wind-chasing fragrance. This made the group of martial artists in the hall realize the difference between a wandering martial artist and a disciple of a major sect. Lin Fei rested for a while but found that his left hand was still sore and powerless, almost as if it were useless. This caused him to worry. I must have suffered internal injuries. Inner power injuries are not easy to recover from. Seems that I must hurry back to the sect to receive treatment. Lin Fei's left arm was now immobilized, but he was not too worried. Once he returned to the sect, his arm would definitely be healed. He just needed to do so as soon as possible. Otherwise, his arm would be disabled. Lin Fei looked at the body of the wind-chasing fragrance on the ground. He thought about how, as an acquired martial artist, the wind-chasing fragrance must have been skilled in acquired martial arts. So, Lin Fei struggled to stand up and went to search his body of him. He took everything from the body, which included 3 secret manuals for sword techniques, body techniques, and acquired level martial arts, as well as some silver bells. Lin Fei counted the silver bills and found that there were over 50,000 taels. This was a pleasant surprise, but it was also expected. The wind-chasing fragrance had been wreaking havoc for such a long time, disappearing without a trace after stealing valuable items, so it was not surprising that he had managed to accumulate so much money along the way. Besides the martial arts manuals and silver tickets, Lin Fei also found some porcelain bottles with various types of powders inside, including some aphrodisiacs and other types of drugs. Mr. Liu also returned to the hall, accompanied by his daughter. Mr. Liu was also aware of everything that happened in the hall. He came in front of Lin Fei and hurriedly saluted, "Thank you, Hero Lin, for killing the evil thief." Mr. Liu saw the blood in the hall and was very uncomfortable, his face turned white. But at this moment, he also held back nausea in his heart and saluted towards Lin Fei, "Hero Lin, thank you so much. Without you, I'm afraid no one would be able to restrain this evil thief today, then the consequences would be unthinkable." Lin Fei graciously accepted the salute from Liu's father and daughter. It was indeed he who saved Miss Liu. Mr. Liu, Miss Liu, I'm a little unwell now, so I'm gonna back to my room to rest. Quickly help Hero Lin to go back to his room to rest. Thus, the two maids hurriedly went forward and helped Lin Fei leave the hall. Looking at Lin Fei's back as he left, Mr. Liu sighed a little and said, "It's still my daughter's wise eyes that know people to have recognized this Lin Fei's uncommoness. But sigh, my old eyes are dimming and I was actually a little disappointed with Hero Lin. Fortunately, you remedied the situation in time and didn't let Lin Fei chill, otherwise it would be me who harmed you and the Li family." Mr. Liu couldn't help but be afraid afterward. If his attitude was a little worse at the beginning, Lin Fei could have slacked off and let the wind-chasing fragrance do whatever he wanted. At that time, the Liu family would have been finished. "Dad, don't you know cousin's character? She personally entrusted the person, how can it be bad?" Miss Liu looked at Lin Fei's back, and her eyes were also shining. Although she was not a martial artist, she knew that body-refining martial artists killing acquired martial artists who were stronger than them was not an easy task. Even though she was sure of Lin Fei's extraordinary talent, she didn't expect him to be so powerful. Well. I was wrong. My eyes deceived me and my daughter is clever." Mr. Liu laughed heartily. Lin Fei was helped back into the room, and he took out 3 secret manuals he had obtained from the wind-chasing fragrance. One was a sword technique, one was a body technique, and the other was an acquired martial art. Lin Fei glanced at the sword and body techniques and found that they were not particularly advanced. The sword technique was not even as good as the 9 shadow saber technique. As for the body technique, it was acquired level. It required inner power to practice, which was useless for Lin Fei. The acquired martial art. What Lin Fei valued most was the acquired martial art. At 9 Profound Sect, he could obtain 3 acquired level martial arts for free, but he didn't go to the martial arts pavilion to get them because he hadn't reached the 9th level of body refining yet. However, it was okay to take a look at the acquired martial art for now. So, Lin Fei opened the acquired martial art manual. This martial art was called Flowing Cloud Force. Finally, Lin Fei understood some of the mysteries of acquired martial artists after checking it. It turned out that the inner power of acquired martial artists was not cultivated but produced naturally. When a body-refining martial artist reached their limit, they would produce a trace of inner power, and then they could choose some acquired martial arts to gradually strengthen their inner power. The birth of inner power was actually divided into 3 types: chi and blood, tendons and bones, and skin and membranes. It was very difficult to reach the limit of tendons and bones and skin and membranes, especially skin and membranes. Any technique that practiced the skin and membranes was considered the hard martial arts, and it was extremely difficult to produce inner power through it. Therefore, it was relatively easy for chi and blood to produce inner power. Thus, most martial artists in the 9 Profound Sect chose to strengthen their chi and blood when they were body refining. Giant whale body refining technique was a martial art that could strengthen chi and blood. The foundation of the acquired martial artists was very important. Once inner power was born, it was related to the strength or weakness of the inner power and the speed of future practice. If chi and blood were strong, the inner power produced would naturally be strong. If chi and blood were weak, the inner power produced would be weak. Lin Fei also saw a description that if someone could produce inner power from chi and blood, tendons and bones, and skin and membrane, and then combine the 3 inner powers and practice acquired martial arts, their foundation would be extremely strong, surpassing most other acquired martial artists. Only then would they have a greater chance of becoming an innate strong martial artist than most ordinary ones. It seems that I should continue to practice my Vajra iron cloth and tendon transformation and bone forging technique and practice them to the limit until I can produce inner power. When I combine the 3 inner powers and practice acquired martial arts, my foundation will be extremely strong, surpassing most other martial artists. Lin Fei's eyes sparkled with a hint of brilliance. He already knew how to enter the acquired level. Chapter 34. The Big Purchase in Treasure Pavilion. Yi Mountain Mansion City was shaken by the news that the Liu family had killed the notorious thief the Wen chasing Fragrance. The thief's body was sent to the government office, and a reward money from the government naturally fell into Lin Fei's hands, as well as the silver from the Liu family. Originally, Lin Yero had promised 20,000 taels of silver, but this time, Mr. Liu unexpectedly gave him 30,000 taels of silver, saying that the extra 10,000 taels were compensation for their previous neglect of Lin Fei. Naturally, Lin Fei did not refuse the extra money and accepted it. This trip was quite rewarding for Lin Fei. With the silver from the Liu family, the government's reward money, and the silver he found on the Wen chasing Fragrance, he received almost 90,000 taels of silver, which was a significant sum. Lin Fei was naturally satisfied. However, Lin Fei's left hand showed no signs of improvement after a day of rest, and the situation even worsened. So he didn't delay any further and went to Mr. Liu and Liu's residence to bid farewell, saying, "Mr. Liu, Miss Liu, my arm was injured and the condition hasn't improved. I need to return to the 9 Profound Sect for treatment as soon as possible, so I've come to say goodbye. Young Master Lin, the Liu family is extremely grateful. When you come to Mountain Mansion City in the future, you must come to the Liu family as a guest." Mr. Liu didn't insist any further. Definitely. After saying that, Lin Fei turned around and left. A few days later, Lin Fei returned to the 9 Profound Sect. He immediately went to find Lin Yero. "Are you injured?" Lin Yero looked at Lin Fei's left arm hanging down, and her expression changed slightly. That flower thief was an acquired martial artist. I was injured by his inner power. He has been killed by me, and Miss Liu is safe. Lin Fei briefly explained the situation. Acquired martial artist, you were injured by his inner power. If you have inner power, it's easy to deal with it. But if you don't, you need someone else to expel the inner power in your arm. Lin Yeo approached and placed her hand on Lin Fei's left arm. Immediately, Lin Fei felt a hot stream of energy flowing into his body from Lin Yero's hand. Lin Yero was very close to Lin Fei. A faint fragrance entered Lin Fei's nose. Lin Fei calmed his mind and quietly experienced Lin Yero's inner power as it flowed through his arm's tendons and meridians. As time passed, about half an hour later, Lin Yero withdrew her hand. Sweat appeared on her forehead and she looked a bit tired. "Okay, I have expelled the inner power in your arm. Try it out." Lin Fei slowly lifted his arm. It could move now. However, it was still a little sore and weak. Eat some blood-activating and stasis-dissolving medicine and rest for a few days, and you'll be fine. Lin Fei, I didn't expect the Wen chasing Fragrance to be an acquired martial artist, putting you in danger. This time, I owe you a favor. If you need any help in the future, you can find me. Lin Yeo said solemnly. She was indeed at fault this time. She asked Lin Fei to protect Miss Liu, but she didn't expect the opponent to be an acquired martial artist. Lin Fei was only a body-refining martial artist. If it weren't for Lin Fei's strength, the consequences would have been death. She felt guilty in her heart and owed Lin Fei a favor, which was only reasonable. Okay, then I won't be polite. If anything happens in the future, I will definitely ask Senior Sister Ling for help. Lin Fei was also not polite. Lin Yero's favor was hard to come by, and he wouldn't waste it. Not to mention, this time he did take a risk. After Lin Yero left, Lin Fei immediately got up and went to the treasure pavilion. Inside the treasure pavilion, Lin Fei exchanged all the silver bills for contribution points. 90,000 silver notes were equivalent to 90,000 contribution points. Combined with the 10,000 plus contribution points he had previously, Lin Fei's contribution points finally exceeded the 100,000 mark. Inside the treasure pavilion, Lin Fei purchased some medicines for promoting blood circulation and removing blood stasis to treat his arm injury. However, Lin Fei still wanted to continue buying some blood-increasing pills. But the effect of the blood-increasing pills in cultivating was not good anymore. At least, Lin Fei felt that it was too slow. So, he asked the elder of the treasure pavilion, "Elder, do you know of any other elixirs that can increase one's chi and blood, besides the blood-increasing pill?" Blood-increasing pill is already the best elixir for increasing chi and blood in our 9 profound sect, the elder replied. Lin Fei pondered for a moment. The effect of the blood-increasing pill was still there, but it was too slow. Now Lin Fei was at the 8th level of body refining. Taking one blood-increasing pill could only increase his cultivation progress by about 1%. If it were other martial artists, this speed would be quite amazing. After all, many martial artists took several years to make a breakthrough. Now Lin Fei's gate whale body refining technique had a cultivation progress of 42%. He needed at least 60 blood-increasing pills to break through to the 9th level. Thinking of this, Lin Fei raised his head and said to the elder, "I want to exchange for 60 blood-increasing pills." 60 pills, are you sure? The elder was somewhat surprised. Sure. The elder did not say anything and directly took out 60 blood-increasing pills, a total of 60,000 contribution points. Also, some medicinal materials to cultivate the Vajra iron cloth. Lin Fei purchased some medicinal materials to use for medicinal baths. Otherwise, the progress of the Vajra iron cloth would hardly improve. After some purchases, Lin Fei had just over 10,000 contribution points left. No amount of contribution points would be enough to spend. Lin Fei shook his head and quickly left the treasure pavilion with the purchased medicinal materials and blood-increasing pills.